My name is Tyler Johnson. I was raised by a single mom. She worked at a nightclub, and that was the main source of income for our family. So, from a young age, helping with household chores and taking care of my younger brother was just part of life for me. I didn't get to experience much of what you'd call a fun teenage life, but I felt it was my mission to support my family. My grandma took care of me and my brother in place of my mom. But after she passed away, the responsibility within the household shifted to me. While my classmates were enjoying after-school activities and karaoke, I was alone, cycling around town. I couldn't stop worrying about our finances, and I was always on the lookout for cheap groceries to save every penny possible. I spent my days visiting local supermarkets, searching for sales and discounts. Hanging out with friends was a foreign concept. My routine was all about biking around searching for groceries.
In stark contrast, my brother, Ethan, had a personality completely opposite to mine. Assertive and outspoken. You'd question if we were even related. Thanks to his good looks, he was treated like royalty by his peers. The adults around us pampered him too. And as a result, he grew up to be quite selfish and self-centered. While I chose to work right after high school to support our family finances, Ethan went to a low-ranked university. However, he suddenly decided he wanted to be an actor, dropped out, and moved to LA to live on his own. And the kicker, the living expenses and startup costs were funded by the money I had saved up through hard work. Ethan, saying "I'll definitely pay you back," took my debit card without asking and withdrew the money. Then, my mom took off with her new boyfriend, and Ethan was gone too. As a result, I was free from my family. After a long time of dedicating myself to my family, I thought it was time to pursue my own happiness. For the first time, I felt like I could fully enjoy my own life.
Around that time, I started dating a girl who used to come to my mom's nightclub. She was someone who used to come over to our place to hang out a lot. I had always thought she was interested in Ethan, so when she said she wanted a relationship with marriage in mind, I was really surprised. True to her word, we soon found out she was pregnant, and we got married, welcoming a daughter. Since I only have a high school diploma, living the high life isn't an option, but I'm committed to doing my best for my family. Raising our daughter, struggling with a parenting book in hand, settled down as she grew. My wife said, now that Emily has started elementary school, I'll start working, and she began to help with the finances. Emily grew up healthy, and unlike her introverted dad, she became an active and assertive child. When a teacher told me she's always the center of attention in class, I couldn't help but laugh, wondering if she was really my child.
It was when Emily turned 10 that a change came to our peaceful daily life. It was a special annual event for my wife and daughter. The event was visiting my mother-in-law's grave. One day, my wife mentioned, "We're going to visit the grave on Emily's birthday. I want her grandmother to celebrate with us." Since then, visiting the grave on Emily's birthday, combining it with an overnight trip, became an annual tradition just for my wife and daughter. I wanted to join, but was told, "No boys allowed, it's girl talk." Since the grave was a 3-hour drive one way from our house, and considering the cost of travel, they could only afford to visit once a year. That's why I thought this once-a-year visit held special meaning for my wife. Of course, I felt sad not being able to celebrate her birthday together on the day, but I also enjoyed a sense of freedom, reminiscent of my bachelor days.
A month later, Ethan, who had aspired to be an actor, suddenly returned home. After not making it as an actor and passing the age of 30, he finally gave up on his dream. Both my wife and I were relieved he was considering getting a stable job. Then Ethan started coming over to our house often, and my wife would cook for him. When I apologized for Ethan coming over frequently, my wife replied, "Why apologize? He's family, and I'm happy to have him." Despite the extra cost and effort, I was truly grateful for my wife's kindness at that moment.
Kids grow up so fast. Emily quickly became a middle schooler. My strong-willed daughter's rebellious phase was intense, with her words becoming rougher than before, and her curfew getting later and later. Every day, battles unfolded between my rebellious daughter and my wife. Sometimes even things would get thrown around. When I tried to mediate their fights, my wife would snap at me, "Just stay out of it." However, one day, her rebellious phase stopped altogether, as suddenly as it began. When I asked my wife if something happened, she only said, "I don't know." Anyway, our peaceful daily life returned.
Finally, Emily became a high schooler, and it was time to think about her future. Having given up on college for financial reasons myself, I wanted her to go to college. When I asked Emily, "What are you planning for your future?" she bluntly said, "I'm getting married." I was taken aback by the unexpected answer and bombarded her with questions. "Married? Do you have someone in mind? You're not pregnant, are you?" Her casual reply left me speechless. "I don't have anyone. I just hate studying and working, so I want to marry a rich guy and be a stay-at-home wife." I felt a deep sense of failure, wondering where I went wrong in raising her. I tried to give her a serious talk for once, saying, "Emily, you see, society is," but she cut me off with, "Leave me alone," and stormed into her room. I discussed it with my wife, but she just said, "Let her do what she wants."
Eventually, my daughter, who had been namelessly after graduation, brought home a fiancé, just as she declared. He was an elite, working for a major corporation. His parents were business owners, and he had many doctors in his family. He didn't flaunt his upper-class background. A truly generous young man. After her fiancé left, I discreetly asked my daughter, "How did you meet him?" To which she replied, "A dating app." I was impressed, thinking, that's young people these days for you. As my daughter's wedding plans progressed smoothly, and the wedding date was set, both my daughter and wife were busy with preparations. As a dad, there wasn't much for me to do, so I was lounging in the living room when my daughter unusually approached me for a chat. She showed me a piece of A3 size paper. Understanding it was about the wedding newspaper, I readily agreed to help, and she joyfully thanked me. "Thanks, Dad." Realizing my daughter was about to get married brought on a wave of emotions. By the way, a wedding newspaper is a paper distributed to guests at the ceremony, detailing the couple's backgrounds and how they met, styled like a juicy celebrity gossip or a sports newspaper.
3 days before the wedding, I was spending some father-daughter time. I still thought of her as my little girl, but here she was, old enough to be married. During this time, she spoke up in a quiet voice. This was it. This was like those TV drama moments where the bride thanks her father. I managed a calm response, hiding my inner excitement.
She started, "I want to walk down the aisle with Dad at the wedding." I couldn't help but smile and joke, "That's the plan. Don't worry. I've been practicing not to step on the dress." Then she said, "I mean, with my real dad." Confused by her words, I replied, "What? What are you talking about?" She continued, "I guess you don't know. I'm not really your biological daughter. I'm sorry for keeping it a secret, but I really want to walk down the aisle with my real dad." Her words were shocking. "Wait, explain it to me properly." She went on, "Mom and my real dad loved each other, and she got pregnant with me. But they couldn't get married for some reason, so I was raised as your daughter." Shaken, I managed to ask, "Is that true?" She confirmed, "It's true. Mom asked if I wanted to meet my real dad, and I said yes. We've met several times. I'm sorry for not telling you." She pleaded, "Please don't blame Mom. She's not at fault. She loves my real dad, and their love is precious. I want her to be happy. Please divorce her for her sake." All I could say was, "I understand how you feel, but I don't want to hear any more right now." She mentioned Ethan. "Ethan, my dad, wants to see me in my wedding dress." Asking why she suddenly brought up Ethan, she said, "Because Uncle Ethan is my real dad." I was in disbelief. If what my daughter said was true, I had been deceived for over 20 years. Just then, my wife returned from the salon. My daughter excused herself, saying, "Don't be mad at Mom. I'm on her side." Her words felt like a final blow to my heart. On her side, after she had me raise a child under false pretenses for 20 years, my love and care for a daughter who now seemed like a stranger had been betrayed. I told my wife, "Sit down. We need to talk." And she seemed to realize everything. She began, "About Emily and Ethan, right? I'm sorry for hiding it." Confronting her if she'd intended to approach me to make me raise the child from the start, she admitted, "Yes, I was in a relationship with Ethan. He had other women, but I wanted his child. He said he was moving to LA and couldn't marry me. Let your brother raise my child. Even if you don't marry me, you can still have a child. Your brother is inexperienced with women. He'll be easy to seduce." Just as Ethan said, "You never suspected us for 20 years. Why didn't you keep it hidden till the end?" I pressed. She revealed, "Ethan proposed to me. He's 40 now and feels lonely. I want to marry him and have him attend the wedding as Emily's father. Anger and disappointment pierced through me. My resolve hardened, and I began preparing for revenge.
After their shocking confession, I stayed away from home. I didn't want to see their faces, but I was also busy preparing. On the wedding day, I went directly to the venue and changed into my morning suit. Ethan and my wife emerged together from the family waiting room. They had an aura of a couple who had been together for many years. Ethan approached me with a smug smile, saying, "Hey, big bro, thanks for coming to your daughter's wedding." He continued sarcastically, "You've heard all about it, right? Well, that's how it is. You should thank me. You got to play house because of me. And think about it, it's not like you could ever get married, right? Family is family, no matter what it looks like. So keep working and support us from here on out." I handed my wife the already signed divorce papers, saying, "Is that all you want to say?" I put that divorce paper signed by my wife into my bag and said, "I'll submit these on my way back." Ethan then said, "While you're at it, pick up a marriage paper for me, will you?" Suppressing my urge to strike him, I left, vowing to bring them down to hell later. Before entering the ceremony hall, I peeked into the bride's room. My daughter approached me with a smile, saying, "Dad, thank you for the wedding newspaper. It was really well done. And thank you for accepting Mom and Ethan as my dad. What's this I found in your room?" I asked, showing her the mail left in her room. "Did you just go into my room without asking? That's the worst. Don't bring up such things today, of all days," she retorted angrily. "What do you plan to do about this?" I inquired, to which she blushed and pleaded, "Can't you sort it out, Dad? For your cute daughter. I can't believe you'd say that," I muttered under my breath as she was called away by a staff member, leaving with the attendant.
I then entered the venue myself. At the reception, I picked up the seating chart, which listed the guest names at each table, each name followed by a title. Ethan was listed as the bride's father, and I was down as the bride's uncle. How much more were they planning to mock me? I felt like I had been pushed off a cliff by my own daughter's hand. Was this the treatment for a parent who had raised her for 20 years, even if not her biological father? I could feel any remaining affection for my daughter crumbling away. My wavered resolution was finally set. She needed to be punished, just as her mom and real father deserved to be. As if it were natural, Ethan walked down the aisle with my daughter, who radiantly smiled, and my wife looking on happily. All three of them are heading for hell in my book. The ceremony and reception went smoothly, and I watched as the bride and groom temporarily left for a costume change. The venue was filled with a festive atmosphere, but my mind was occupied with cold thoughts of revenge.
Ladies and gentlemen, it seems the bride and groom have made it into a special edition of the newspaper, a staff member announced as they distributed it at each table. However, the newspaper wasn't the one my daughter had prepared. It was the one I had switched out just before. Unaware of the murmurs among the guests, the host continued as planned. The creator of this bridal newspaper, Mr. Tyler Johnson, the bride's uncle, will now speak. The host introduced me. Taking the microphone, I began, "Thank you for gathering here today. Have you had a chance to look at the special edition I distributed? The bride was born from a cuckoo child scenario. The shocking truth behind 20 years of infidelity." Let me talk about the headline first. I was introduced as the bride's uncle, but until 3 days ago, I was her father. The room buzzed with whispers. The host, sensing something was amiss, froze with a forced smile and scrambled to communicate with someone. Continuing, I said, 3 days ago, I was told by my daughter that her real father was someone else. She had known for years, meeting him without my knowledge. Just that was enough to knock me down. To make matters worse, she said her real father was my brother, the man who walked her down the aisle earlier. He pushed his wife and daughter onto me because they were in the way of his acting career. Unaware of any of this, I lived diligently as a father for the family. In the end, my daughter told me, "I'm on Mom's side." As if I was the villain in their way, she blamed me. How did my daughter end up like this? I'd love to see the parents' faces. Now, everyone, please look. These are the bride's parents, who deceived everyone and pursued their affair for over 20 years. Spotlight operator, please shine a light on table number 2, I instructed, and despite the surprise, they managed to put the spotlight on my wife and Ethan. As the guest attention suddenly focused on the two of them, I said, "You've been quietly watching everything unfold. Sorry to keep you waiting. Today's main characters, the bride's parents. Let's hear what they have to say. Let's start with the bride's mother. How do you feel about continuing our fake marriage? You said you were going to your mother's grave every year, but where were you really going? I pointed the mic at my wife, but she stubbornly refused to look up. You can answer, can you? I'll answer for you. You were meeting Ethan with our daughter, weren't you? Now, let's ask Ethan, the mastermind behind the cuckoo plan, and the real father of our daughter. I then directed the mic toward Ethan.
Ethan exclaimed, "You're ruining the wedding and still call yourself human. Did you hear that? Who's really in the wrong here? The man who betrays his own brother, continues an affair for 20 years, and now plays the role of the father, or me. Since we're here, let's ask the guests. If you think this man is in the wrong and it's okay to sue him for damages, please applaud." The room erupted in applause. "Thank you, everyone. So, here's my wedding gift to the two of you. Ta-da," I said, dramatically unveiling a check, visible to all. It read, Ethan child support $150,000, Ethan alimony $100,000, my wife alimony $100,000, and cheers filled the room. Why should I pay child support? The daughter is already an adult. It's no joke. Ethan protested loudly, to which I replied, "That's the expense I've paid as a father. It's the money I fronted for you. She could have gone to college and added another $100,000 to that if she wasn't like you, hating studies. Lucky she hates studying like you. Why are you doing this? It's terrible. Is this what you do to a wife of 20 years? My wife finally spoke up, only to be met with jeers from the audience. Look who's talking. In the midst of this, my daughter, dressed in a wedding gown, rushed in, having heard the commotion. "I have nothing to do with this. Don't drag me into your mess. Are you trying to ruin my wedding?" she accused, to which I replied, "Not involved." "How dare you say that? The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Brazen, irresponsible, greedy for money. Can you still say you're not involved after seeing this?" And I unfolded a second document.
It was a copy of a demand letter addressed to my daughter from multiple men she met on a dating app, asking for money back. Mike is asking for $50,000 back. You've missed the deadline. What's borrowed must be returned, I told her. Why are you doing this? I was about to marry rich, she complained. So the groom is just a cash cow, like Kai was to my wife and Ethan. Truly, like mother, like daughter. Don't think the three of you can just walk away from this. A lawyer is waiting in the dressing room. If you try to escape, I'll call the police next. That's the end of my special performance. Groom, I'm sorry for all this. I apologize to the groom at the entrance. As my daughter turned to the entrance, the groom stood there, watching the scene unfold. It's not true. Don't be deceived, she screamed at the groom. Ignoring her, the groom said, "You've been through a lot. I was close to being just like you. Thank you for exposing everything at your own expense. Of course, the marriage is off. Sir, could you introduce me to your lawyer? I'd like to sue your daughter for damages, including the wedding expenses. Don't decide on your own. You'll be the one paying damages. If you call off the marriage, I'll sue you for double," she continued screaming. The groom took the mic and addressed the guests. "Thank you for coming today. Unfortunately, my marriage is canceled, as you've seen. It seems I lack the judgment to see people for who they are. I'll take this as a lesson and strive to do better. Please enjoy your meal," he said, bowing deeply, receiving the loudest applause of the day.
As my daughter wailed pathetically, I escorted her outside the venue while staff caught Ethan and my wife attempting to sneak out the back. I threw Ethan and my wife into the waiting room where the lawyer was waiting and left the rest of the professionals. After leaving the venue and filing for divorce, I returned home to pack my things.
I didn't want to see my ex-wife, Ethan, or my daughter ever again. I looked for a new place to live, canceling my smartphone contract and cutting off all contact with the three of them. This is my revenge for being deceived by my own brother and my ex-wife and betrayed by my daughter. I don't know where they borrowed the money from, but they paid the alimony in full as promised. I heard from the lawyer that they had to sell everything sellable, like cars and watches. Ethan now works from dawn to dusk in manual labor and takes a security guard shift at night. He has to keep this up until he's 75 to pay off everything. My ex-wife and daughter were living in a cramped apartment, hiding from the world, but they were so loud that the neighbors called the police and they were kicked out. Now, they've moved into Ethan's room, all three squeezing into a one-room apartment. My ex-wife and daughter are working to pay off their debts, and you can imagine where. Thanks to all this, I've been named the successor by the retiring company president. It's a small company with just 20 employees, but I, a high school graduate, am going to repay the kindness of those who raised me